special presentation for you all tonight. And the overall title of this presentation is A Herd of Lions in San Diego. Those of you who have been blessed with hearing one of my poetic masterpieces previously know that the uniqueness of life in Libya provides an extraordinary poet like me with a lot of material. However, there really is not an endless supply. So I must offer a disclaimer. Now don't be shocked, but this is it. From reunion to reunion, I am sometimes forced to rely on material that was actually included in a previous reunion's poem. Like the one in Dayton, in Albuquerque, and Asheville, and New Orleans, and Dallas. Well, you get the picture. Now, I know it's not really necessary to mention that, because considering the age of this crowd, there's not a person in the group that can remember what happened 3 years ago. 3 months ago, or even 3 days ago. But 60 years ago, not a problem at all. But 3 years ago is pretty much of a blur. So if you don't remember Dayton, it could be that you weren't there. Or were you, Anyway, I guess with the memory lapse is so prevalent in a crowd of this age, it was silly of me to even bring the topic up. So forget I even said anything about it. About what, you ask? Is anybody home out there tonight? I just don't get it. Well, folks, it was 60 years ago today, well, actually 60 years and 6 weeks to the day when Brother John and I arrived in Tripoli. It was March 23rd, 1959. A few days later, I was sitting in Miss Watson's 6th grade class at Wheelus Elementary, my third 6th grade teacher that school year. But I was okay with that because there was this blonde bombshell in my class, a Miss America type, 2 seats up and 1 seat over. Her name was Diane Nivey, and she was the woman of my dreams. Well, there were actually 2, Diane and Sandra D. But I must admit I was a little concerned that Sandra wasn't going to wait for me with all the attention she was getting from Bobby Darin. Idiot. Anyway, Diane stole my young heart, then she twisted it into pieces and stomped on it. You see, Diane loved Fred Stapleton. But she also loved Bill Austin, both of them. And it seemed to me as if one is in love with 2 guys, there should probably be room for 3. Doesn't that seem reasonable? Well, apparently Diane did not think so. You'll notice that she didn't join us this year. That's because she thinks I'm still carrying that flame. This generous, beautiful, kind, caring soul was worried that seeing her again would bring back a flood of painful and crushing memories for me. Come on now, Diane, it's been 60 years for Pete's sake. 60 long years. Long, lonely, sad, depressing years. But I'm getting over it. Ask my $200 an hour therapist. And early this year, I even started dating again. I think that calls for a poem. But first, let me apologize for its lack of quality this year. You see, I had every intention of finishing it last Sunday in time for me to review it, critique it, and tweak it, and really make it a work of art. But when I went to my car to get the laptop, which I actually remembered I had left there the day before, I noticed the inside of the car was really dusty. And there was a dustbuster in the car, so I took the time to vacuum the car out. As I did, I noticed the car was also dirty on the outside, and it needed a wash job, so I went into the house to get some rags and a bucket. When I did, I noticed there was some unopened mail on the table. I decided to go through the mail before I washed the car. I put my keys on the table and started sorting through the mail. I separated the bills from the junk mail and put the junk mail in the trash can under the table, and that's when I noticed the trash can was almost full. So I decided to take out the trash. Then I thought, since I'm going to be near the mailbox when I take out the trash, I might as well pay the bills first, you know what I mean? So I took my checkbook off the table, but I noticed there was only 1 check remaining in the checkbook. And my extra checks were in the desk in the den. So I went to the desk where I found a bottle of Diet Coke that had been sitting there. I left it early, I was drinking it early, I left it there, you know what I mean? Of course it was getting warm, so I decided to put it in the refrigerator, and as I headed toward the kitchen with the Coke, a withering plant caught my eye. It needed to be watered. So I set the Coke down on the counter so I could water the plant, and there were my reading glasses that I had been searching for all morning. So I decided I better put them back on my desk so I could find them later. But first I'd water the plant. I set the glasses back down on the counter and I filled the container with water and suddenly spotted the TV remote. I realized that someone had left it on the kitchen table. Can you believe that? And I knew that later that night when we went to watch TV, we would wonder where the remote is and we wouldn't even think about it could be on the kitchen table. So I decided to put it back in the den where it belongs. But first I watered the plant and I poured some water on the plant. Some of it, a lot of it, got on the leaves and went right on the floor. So I set the remote back down on the table and I grabbed some paper towels and I wiped up the spill. And when I did, I noticed how dusty the floor was. So I went to the car to get the dust duster and immediately I noticed how dirty the car was. And I decided it needed to be washed, but that would have to wait till next weekend. There wasn't much time left in this one. And the car hadn't been washed, the bills weren't paid, there was a warm bottle of Diet Coke still sitting on the counter, the plant was still withered, there was only one check in my checkbook, I couldn't find the remote, I couldn't find my glasses, and I couldn't remember what I did with my car keys, and I hadn't even started on the poem. When I tried to figure out why I didn't get anything done on Sunday, I was mystified because it seemed like I was busy all day long, and I was really tired. So anyway, rather than an example of poetic excellence, you're going to hear an example of poetic mediocrity this evening, and I thank you for enduring it. In the 50s and the 60s, we lived on a distant shore. How far from San Diego, folks? 6,000 miles and more. Abiding in a foreign land by shining coastal waters, our parents went, we went along, we were their sons and daughters. And though our tours of duty didn't last forever, we are better off because we walked the shores of Tripoli. About 13 times since '82, this group has met somewhere, so former friends could reunite and meet some new friends there. In Texas, Asheville, New Orleans, and Albuquerque too, where we relive an awesome time and friendships we'd renew. Last time was in the Buckeye State, where once again we got a chance to celebrate those years and reminisce a lot. Yes, that was just 3 years ago. We were in Dayton then. Now we're in San Diego, folks, to do it all again. And here's some information you should be aware of, gang. A dedicated lady gave her all to this shebang. She sacrificed her blood and sweat. This lady we call Judy has earned our admiration, love, respect, and gratitude. Okay, I get it. Gratitude really isn't a word. I know. Well, so what? I never claimed to be Ralph Waldo Emerson. Have you ever written a poem? The only options to end that line were gratitude or howdy doody. That's your only two. Maybe you feel the line should have read, she sacrificed her blood and sweat, this lady we call Judy, has earned our admiration, love, respect, and howdy doody. Well, I don't think so. So just sit back and settle for what I clearly warned you up front was going to be some poetic mediocrity. Didn't I tell you that? Now can we move on? Now Judy got it all worked out. The details were all planned. We'd meet and greet and drink and eat, remembering that land across the wide Atlantic, folks, on that distant shore where we once lived and now we will remember evermore. So we're at the Crown Plaza now, recalling days of old, with stories of Muhammad and loose change that you could fold. We've come to California, y'all, to meet with Wheelus friends, with baggage packed with Lipitor, Viagra, and Depend. We gathered with some special folks, some old friends and some new, to ask 100 times or more, whatever happened to? And though we're 3 years older now, it doesn't matter much, for age is just a state of mind with aches and pains and such. So here we are remembering that place along the shore. It seems like only yesterday, not 50 years or more. We did not all arrive or leave on similar days, you know. Tours didn't always overlap. As some came, some would go. Some Wadans headed stateside once their visit they had survived, 10 days before a shipment of new Wadans had arrived. And although some were heading out as others headed in, we share a common bond, my friends, for all of us have been to Tripoli and back, you see. That means that we all know all sorts of things about that place we lived so long ago. What kind of things, now you may ask, if you're a spouse or guest, did we experience back then? Just wait, you'll be impressed. But you'll think I'm embellishing the things that we could see there. To really understand that place, you really had to be there. We came to San Diego so those stories we could tell about what some GIs would call their 18 months in hell. But Wadan saw it differently. Though it was not Cancun, our family's tours of duties always ended much too soon. But nonetheless, I'll do my best, recalling just enough about that special place and that very special stuff. The Mirage, Oasis, Nomad Club, the Wheelus Teen Club too, Sabratha, Leptis Magnus, paper coins, and Just For You, Aladdin heaters, Sukal Juma, Ramadan and such, the summer droughts, the winter rains, the weather was too much, piastras, air shows, olive trees, flies swarming all around, the British Officers Club, my friends, and golf greens that were brown. Which Wadans traveled here to meet with us, their Wheelus friends, who brought along their spouses' gas acts, Flomex, and Attends, who gathered here to share some cheer with old friends and some new, repeatedly inquiring, whatever happened to? Well, there was Alan, Becky, Helen, Bob, Chuck, Terry, Chad, and Glenn, two Claudias, two Donnas, Esther, Ginny, Jay, and Ben, Diane and Dennis, Skip and Tom, Pat, Janice, Ed, and Lanny, Loretta, Linwood, Patrick, Paula, Shelley, Ruth, and Danny, two Pams, two Mikes, two Jims and Joe, three Johns, two Freds and Ron, four Carols and three Sandys, Stephen, Willie, Dan, and Don, two Marys and two Garys, two Georges, also Frank, Luann, Rosanna, Judy, Steve, and Kathy, Rick, and Hank, Phil, Nancy, Noel, Rennie, Jenny, Janet, Linda, Larry, two Sharons and two Karens, Susie, Sylvia, and Sari. Now, if I left your name off, dude, that wasn't very nice. Perhaps it was because I mentioned someone else's twice. We weren't all there the same years, though we shared something great, our memories of Tripoli and flies that pollinate. The camel saddles, barricans, the Ghibli and the flood, the summer streets we had of dust, the winter streets of mud, the Aphex, Shaki, puzzle rings, spearfishing in the Med, Baksheesh, the Harmer, houseboys, and the sheepskin by your bed. Before you left for Libya, you got so many shots, protecting you from every ill, except, of course, the trots. A dreadful thing those trots were, folks, a terrible affliction. The Tripoli trots provided suffering beyond description. But they had one big benefit, an upside you could say, for you could drop 11 pounds in less than half a day. Your gender didn't matter whether you were sir or madam. If you were there for more than a month, I'm confident you had. Now, Sterovita was the milk that some of us consumed. Though it took getting used to, folks, we nonetheless assumed it was produced by cows by now. But now, you know, I'm not so sure. But it was only one more thing we all had to endure. And though that white stuff seemed like milk, at least a little bit, you always had to shake it up before you opened it. Yes, you bought it in a carton. It was liquid. It was white. But was it really milk, my friends? Not really. No, not quite. The first time that I tasted it, I sipped a little bit. I stared at it and then proclaimed, hey, this stuff tastes like, well, let's just say it doesn't taste real good. But what it really tasted like, the local moms and pops considered such a dandy way to fertilize their crops. For it produced a bumper crop that kept the locals happy. Tomatoes big as cantaloupes with just a hint of crappy. But you could eat an apricot, tomato, or a peach, provided that you soak them for an hour or two in bleach. They had the scent of Clorox, yes, and though you might resent it, when the houseboy said, now here's the poop, you knew he really meant it. While Clorox permeated all our fruits and veggies there, the scent of fresh dropped sheep dung drifted gently through the air. The summer heat, the winter rain, and never the two would meet. An old man sipping shahi as he squatted in the street. With a face so bright and a smile so broad, he'd take another sip, and just about that time a fly would stroll across his lip. Our high school mascot was unique. It was not a bear or cat, but something called a Wadan, folks, but what the hell was that? They told you it was like a ram, but bigger and real mean, the fiercest, strongest animal that you had ever seen. They said that you must honor it, and pay homage, homage you must pay it. And that, my friend, since you were one, you better learn to say it. The school buses were noisy and the seats were oh so dusty. Exhaust pipes fouled the nearby air. The engines were quite rusty. Attended by a lovely woman, always dressed in blue, who tried to crack the whip on us until the trip was through. She was the bus monster, my friends. Her voice could easily drown out all the other voices as we traveled through that town. She knew a little English, though her power was renowned, and andiamo, she would say, then shut up and sit down. Now in that country there were many creatures that did well, among the folks of Libya, like scorpions and gazelle, sheep, locusts, snakes, and lizards, dromedaries, donkeys too, but none could hold a candle to the one that we all knew to be our favorite creature, folks. And years ago I heard Gaddafi had proclaimed this nimble guy the national bird. A treat that all chameleons love, this creature of the sky, the national bird of Libya. You guessed it, folks, the fly. But when the tour was ending and the date to head home neared, it was then we finally recognized that place was pretty weird. But the reunion's a tradition now, and if we try, we might find other people like ourselves, more Wadans to invite, to join us as we reminisce about the Wheelus scene, the day we got there, day we left, and all the days between. Our guests tonight may well assume my stories are contrived and think that we're just celebrating that we all survived. The heat, the dirt, the awful smells, the sheep dung in the street, the ghiblis and the locust swarms. But really, wasn't that neat? They're on the shores of Tripoli, and what we do and see there. To say it one more time, my friends, you really had to be there. For it was thus a special time with very special friends, and if we play our cards right, folks, that friendship never ends. Well, thank you much to stay in touch. And as I close, I'll say, you were a Wadan way back then, and you're still one today. But now it's time to end this rhyme. It's time to close this prose. But first, I just remind you of what everybody knows. This gathering's important so we Wadans can renew the friendships that we form there or here with other people who live by the shining coastal waters very far away. And we meet intermittently to reminisce and say, Kifalek, old Siddiqui, what you doing? How you been? It was so very long ago, but hey, remember when? Ladies and gentlemen, they say life's like a book, and if that's true, then Wheelus was quite a chapter, and I hope you enjoy reliving that chapter as much as I do. Thank you so much.
They'll live in our hearts and minds for everyone. And I give you Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio. Marilyn's notorious for being late to these things.